Hello, my name is Hector Acuna, and in today's video you're going to watch how I created this 8 by 12 inch oil painting as an example for the neon palette process prompt for my online painting course. If you have any questions, please let me know and enjoy the video. So the first thing I'm doing is laying out my color palette. This is a neon painting example, which means that I'm trying to keep the colors at a very high chroma so that the saturation and the intensity of my palette is really pure. Now, to do this, I'm trying to be really careful and mindful about how I'm mixing each of these colors on my palette. So you can see to the right of me on my glass palette, I have titanium white on the left, and then a cadmium yellow light, a cadmium red light, a radiant magenta, a radiant turquoise, a phthalo turquoise, and a cadmium green all the way on the right side. And those are my starting colors. Now I'm blocking in this painting that is from a reference of my wife holding binoculars in this really silly photograph. And I'm kind of blocking in the main shapes of the composition using only one of those colors. I'm starting with the darkest color that I have access to, which is my phthalo turquoise. It's the second color from the right. And I use that to block in the main part of the binoculars to start to gauge the darkest values in the painting before moving into a second color. In this case, it is a very thinned out cadmium red light with a little bit of the cadmium yellow, before then deciding to select which colors to paint my background with. And I decided to go with this cadmium green because I didn't want to go with anything too warm in fear that it would start to blend in or visually group with the hands or the part of the portrait that I had painted and loosely blocked in with the red. So I tried to keep the background a little bit more on the cooler side into the lime green and then eventually into this radiant turquoise color. Looking at my reference image, I decided to keep a lot of the structure within the painting. I liked the way that this interior space in the photograph broke up the background with various diagonals and sharp horizontal lines. That really acted nicely against the circular shapes that were in the center of the composition. And then as time went on, I started to get into various plane shifts with value jumps that were either brighter or darker than areas that I had initially laid in. I started to dip into more of the orange and the yellows of my palette. Again, I was really trying to keep that chroma really, really high. I didn't want to mix any sort of complementary combinations together in fear that that would mute some of my intensity of my colors. I tried not to use a lot of titanium white because that also tends to create pastel versions of colors and takes out some of the intensity of the pigments in these initial mixtures. So this is the second session in another class for my online course. So at this point, that first layer had started to get a little bit dry and tacky. It was easier to now go in and start to model some of those forms and to really pick apart some of the details to create more clear passages and better shifts of volume. I also started to play more with temperature in this second session. I started being more mindful of cooler colors receding and warmer colors coming forward in space. So here you can see I'm pushing some of those violets and blue hues in the painting, especially in the hands or areas that are farther away from the binoculars, and then kind of worked into the areas that were more illuminated with warmer light, bringing in more orange, yellow, and even the cadmium green color to pull things forward in space. The other thing I wanted to do was start to figure out where my focal areas were going to be. So I'm pointing out this left side of the binoculars where we can see a little bit of the eye kind of maximized in the binoculars. That became a big area of focal point, or a new focal point in the painting, because there was a high contrast of both color but also in value. And then here's where I kind of started to put finishing touches on the painting, building up the impasto, thinking about texture to pull our eyes into different parts of the painting. Especially because this painting has a very puzzle piece type of construction, I really had to be mindful of where those smaller details and nuances were going to draw the eye. In the end, this was a really fun painting to make. I don't typically work with such chromatic colors and such a bright, vivid palette. I hope you give this painting process a try, and I hope it goes well for you. Thanks so much for watching, and have a nice day.